You know, you can feel a bunch of different emotions all at the same time. I want to tell you something I learned from a therapy modality called internal family systems, or IFS, that could be useful to us politically in building a better world. So, the basic idea of IFS is sort of like internal parts, okay? So, if you think of yourself in a situation where, do I want to go out or do I want to stay home tonight? Well, part of me wants to stay in and part of me wants to go out. Look, you're feeling two different things at the same time. Complicated, right? Now, let's make this a little more complicated. What happens if you're at work and you're in a meeting with a whole bunch of different people, you know, from all kinds of different backgrounds, and your boss says something kind of racist? Okay. What's going on inside you? What parts might you have? Well, maybe you've got like a professionalism part that's just like, I just want to do my job, like for God's sake. Maybe there's a part of you that wants to stand up and say something. Maybe you've got some privilege and you feel like I should use this to stand up and say something. Maybe you've got like a protector part that like wants to protect other people in the room who might be more affected by a comment like that. Maybe you've got an activist part that sort of feels like this is wrong and something needs to be done. Maybe you've got like a diplomat part that's sort of like, okay, well, should I say something now and like call out the boss and like, or should I maybe try to negotiate this in private later? Maybe you've got like an underling part that like fears the retribution of saying something to your boss. Maybe you would fear being fired or being punished in some way or not getting chosen for the next promotion, right? So some of these parts might be bigger than others for various reasons, right? Some of them might be kind of like, oh, that's like a little of an afterthought. But this one is like, this feels really big to me. Now, this is important in every interaction we ever have. You see it in comment sections all the time, people like going off, people angry. And I think it's really important that people learn to spend a little bit of time deconstructing how they feel in these emotionally complex situations so that we can act in accordance with our values instead of acting reactively according to whichever part feels biggest for us in the moment because of whatever we may have been through before in our lives. Now, I'll give you an example of how I saw this play out in a particularly egregious way in the presidential election the United States just had. There were a lot of well-meaning-ish Democrats who wanted to make sure that Kamala Harris got elected for what I hope are now very obvious reasons, right? And they had a very big part. In fact, they had a part so big and maybe a little bit of a lack of nuance that they didn't even realize that you could feel multiple things at the same time. And so everything gets subsumed by this one part. And this one part was telling them that no matter what happens, Kamala Harris needs to become president so that Donald Trump doesn't become president. Okay? And I agree with that. Honestly, I think that would have been better. I hope that's plain to everyone at this point that it actually was important to get Kamala Harris elected. But the Democrats who were doing this were doing it in such a chaotic and reactive way that they were costing themselves allies and solidarity. And I saw this play out in the form of Democrat rallies where you would occasionally see pro-Palestine supporters standing up and saying "Free Palestine," to which the Democrats at those rallies would spontaneously, in large groups, chant over them for more years. This is what it looks like when you have one part that's so big that you cannot allow anything else. It would have been so easy for Democrats to be like, we want Kamala Harris to win, and also what's happening to Palestine is wrong. And if, when those protesters stood up and said "Free Palestine," all of the Democrats in that place also chanted "Free Palestine" instead of 4 more years, they would have been pushing Kamala Harris into knowing what side her bread was buttered on. But instead, they chanted 4 more years, which says, instead, that we don't care what you do to Palestine. We need you to win because we are more afraid of Donald Trump than we care about anything. This is why it's important for us to use tools like IFS to get to know all of our parts so that we can understand how multiple things can be true at the same time. Because if we allow ourselves to be reduced to whatever our biggest emotion is in any moment and steamroll anything that contradicts that thing, we cost ourselves friends, we cost ourselves allies, we make ourselves impossible to talk to, we are unable to hear critique, and we are unable to be better. Anyway, I think that's how internal family systems, or IFS, could be useful to us in building solidarity and in moving towards a world that is better than the one that we've got. Because remember, the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. We need to be offering people something that the oppressor cannot. And connecting to your body and connecting to your emotions is something that they don't want you to do, because if you're happy, then you don't have that God-sized hole or that capitalism-sized hole inside you. And you have to fix it from the inside. Because if you keep trying to make yourself happy with external stuff, it'll just go forever and ever and ever until you want to be king of the moon or whatever.